Today on Aphantasia Meow, we'll be going over the first of 5 keys that I've discovered over the past 2 years on how to be successful in developing your mind's eye.
Meow.
All right, so welcome back to Aphantasia Meow. My name's Alec, and I'm really excited because this has been something that I've been wanting to do for a little while. And it's going to be the first of 5 keys, like I mentioned. Now, these keys I picked up along the way in working with people over the past 2 years. And these also came about within my own mind's eye journey in the past 10. And so these are just some keys that I wanted to share. And the way I'm going to do it is we'll talk about number 1 today, and then I'll release 1 a week after that. So for the next 5 weeks, you'll get a fun video every week. But before we jump in, I actually want to be really transparent with you guys for just a minute. So within me building this whole practice and method, I guess you could say, and trying to come out with resources, I've run into a bit of a dilemma here and there. And the dilemma is that, you know, things are very subjective at this point. Like, I've been working with people, they've been experiencing breakthrough, but I've been lacking the objectivity, you know, of knowing that we were able to change somebody's mind's eye experience. Now, somebody can report that, and that's great. And if you check my Facebook page, there's reviews on there that say things like that. However, in terms of actually pointing to actual data and saying, okay, we know for sure that the mind's eye is changing from doing these methods, I haven't had that yet. And so that's actually what I'm trying to fix with the testing method, the experimental testing that I'm running right now with the binocular rivalry stuff. So that being said, I haven't really wanted to release my exercises as a whole package yet because it's harder for me to know if somebody's doing them right. It's harder for me to help somebody walk through them. There would be no way to like measure if they're actually working for people if I don't have any interaction with them. And the last thing I'll mention on that, just so you know, is that I am doing this full time now. This is all I'm doing with my day-to-day. And I don't have any outside funding, right? And so I am building a coaching practice here with this, but I don't want people to only have to connect into my coaching sessions in order to get value or in order to even grow their mind's eye. But it's been like this balancing act of releasing content and yet not shooting myself in the foot that it's, you know, that I'm irrelevant. But what I'm hoping that this series does is I'll be walking through the main points of how I got to where I got. And honestly, the exercise I've created from these main points, like, they're not that complicated. So part of my hope is that you guys can watch these and then kind of get creative with your own methods and develop even your own practice regimen that ends up getting you somewhere in progressing the mind's eye. And so for now, I hope this gives you tons of value, a good place to start from, a good place to build off of. And then once I have more objectivity, like with that test that I'm developing, then I'll start thinking about releasing the content and releasing the exercises in more of a widespread sort of way. Maybe I'll write something or something like that. We'll talk about it when we get there. So until then, I really hope, like I said, that this is an awesome starting place for you, a place to launch from. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so we're going to jump into key number 1. But before I do that, I just want to mention and set some expectations for what these keys are all about. Okay, so first of all, this isn't a practice once sort of thing. It definitely didn't work like that for me. It doesn't work like that for my students for the most part. Actually, there have been a few where, you know, it's quite dramatic. But for the most people, it's going to be an ongoing practice. It's very similar to learning like an instrument or something. You can't expect to go to a piano lesson and then after that one piano lesson to be able to play Bach on stage at, you know, a concert show after a week. So, you know, let these things kind of settle in, try to develop some sort of practice for yourself as you go, and the consistency really helps. And I also want to mention, we're definitely focusing on the mind's eye here, not projecting images into the black space when you close your eyes, but that being said, these tips can help with projecting images too. So you can use them for that as well. And last thing, breakthrough moments can be very dramatic or extremely subtle. And we'll talk about this more as we go through the videos. But what you want to do is keep like a journal that you can write down any slight sort of change that you may have noticed, and that really, really helps. Okay, so I'm done laying the foundation. let's get to key number 1. And here we go. Key number 1, calming the mind. Learning how to relax the brain and calm the mind has been essential in my own progression and then on the sessions that I've been running with people. So pretty much every session my students will hear me say, hey, make sure you're relaxed. Make sure that we're trying to keep you as relaxed as possible. And we're going to dive into a little bit of why that is as we go here. So first thing we want to mention when talking about calming the mind is the brainwave states. And I'm not going to do a deep dive on this, but basically the brainwave states just describe electromagnetic impulses in the neurons that we can measure through an EEG device. And we've classified different brainwave states with different range of hertz. So the fastest one's beta, and that's kind of when you're creative, decision-making. It's where we live most of our life. And then alpha states when you start to relax or meditate and you start sinking down kind of into a calmer state. Theta brainwave states show up in like this awaken asleep moment when you're waking up or falling asleep. And then delta state is when you're really, really relaxed. And it's like deep, dreamless sleep. You're not even conscious. Your body's just restoring itself. There's another state called gamma, but honestly, I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm not even totally sure that neuroscience knows a whole lot about it yet. We can see it in spikes, and we've been able to record it in lifelong meditators, but, it's one of these things that's kind of still a mystery. And so now, why is this important? Let's talk about it. So in these other states of consciousness, in these other brainwave states, is when mental imagery is much, much more perceivable. Now, this goes for people who are phantasic and learning how to be hyperphantasic like I did. It also goes for aphantasic people that I've worked with that are trying to learn how to use their mind's eye. And so part of it is like getting that conscious mind out of the way so that you can start to perceive things that are outside of your normal perception. And there's a fairly common experience, even sometimes with aphantasic people, where when you're falling asleep at night, or if you're waking up in the morning, sometimes you'll get these images like a flash, and definitely share down below in the comments if you have ever experienced something like that, because a lot of people have. And what's happening is your brain is transitioning through that theta brainwave state, and there's this momentary conscious experience of an image. So let's talk about that real quick. What that's called is a hypnagogic image, right? Hypnagogy describes when you're falling asleep, and it's that state that you enter into when you're in between awake and asleep. And then when you're waking up, it's actually called hypnopompic, but that's just getting technical. So those images you're able to perceive those because your brain is shifting into that next state. Now, the important thing to remember about hypnagogic imagery is that it's much, much different and typically way more vivid and like first person, like you're physically seeing something, than the mind's eye ever is, really. The mind's eye is way more abstract. It's more of like a sense of what something looks like, but it doesn't typically have to do with seeing physically like hypnagogic imagery does. So if you've experienced a hypnagogic image while you're waking up or falling asleep, that's really awesome. That could be counted as a breakthrough too, because sometimes people practice exercises and have more of that happen. However, that experience is way more vivid typically than just say your average mind's eye experience. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's big reasons why learning how to access different brainwave states is really important, learning how to calm down your mind so that you can start to perceive these different sorts of thoughts that are outside of our normal mode. Now, at the end of each video, I'm going to talk about the different strategies on how to start accessing these things. So here's where the rubber hits the road. And what I'm going to share on this lesson are my 2 favorite types of meditation ever. Now, I know meditation for a lot of us out there is kind of a sore subject because a lot of meditation centers around visualizing. Don't worry, we're not talking about visualizing types of meditation at all. They're actually not my favorite types, by the way, so check it out. My first favorite form of meditation is called paced breathing, and simply that just means intentional breathing in and intentional breathing out. There's videos on YouTube, like if you type in paced breathing exercise, you can find a ton of them, and you basically just breathe in with the tone and out with the tone. And what you'll want to do when you're doing this sort of paced breathing is you breathe into about 85 to 95% of full lung capacity, and then you just relax to breathe out. You never have to feel like you're straining or pushing, but the idea is that you're focusing intentionally on your breath, which we normally don't do, And what that will do is start activating the parasympathetic nervous system, where your body will start to relax. And you'll be able to access into these deeper brainwave states fairly quickly. At least it's my favorite way and quickest way to really calm down my mind. Now, my next favorite form of meditation, again, no visualization required, is called contemplative meditation. Well, there's different names for it too, like contemplative prayer, anchoring meditation. I think transcendental meditation uses some of the same technique. And so what you do with contemplative meditation is you pick an anchor, and that anchor could be like something like a phrase or a word or maybe a verse, if you want to just recite that verse to yourself over and over. And you continue to think of all of the aspects of whatever that thing is. So for instance, if I want to think about love for my family, I would think about who I love in my family. I think about how much I love my family. If I wanted to use like a phrase, maybe say a quote like from Rumi or something, I would just think of that phrase over and over, and I'd think of the different aspects of it, almost like I'm turning a gem in my hand and looking at the different aspects of that gem. And then whenever your mind starts to wander, because trust me, it will, then you just gently recognize that your mind is wandering, and you slowly and gently bring it back to your anchor, and you continue to think on that anchor. And what this helps to do is really focus the conscious mind to what you actually want to be paying attention to, and not just letting our minds run all throughout everything, and because that's typically how we're just living day to day. So now with these two practices alone, you can definitely learn how to start accessing these different brainwave states and accessing these different states of consciousness where you're more relaxed. Some other things might start to be perceivable. And then with practice, you'll be able to like move in and out of these relaxed states fairly easily. Like I used to start with, I started short, probably around 5 to 10 minutes. And then I built up from there to 30. And then I used to do an hour session, like all at one time, just totally immersed in it. And after I got the feel of it and how to do it, then I would cut that time back to like 30 minutes, 20 minutes. Now I can do a 10-minute session and I just feel amazing afterwards. So, okay, so that's key number 1, calming the mind. I hope that that gives you a really great place to start, and that it was encouraging, especially for those of you who may have tried meditation in the past and just got discouraged because most of the content for meditation out there is like, visualize this, visualize that, picture yourself on a beach, right? And so none of that's required for doing these two types of meditation and learning how to calm your brain down to these other states. So great place to start. Even with my students, I recommend after our first call that is what they focus on for at least the first couple of days. And moving on, as a little preview, the next key we're going to be talking about next week, key number 2, is don't try, just relax. Until then, I'm absolutely available for you guys to reach out to. Schedule a call with me. I'm open to have an hour conversation with anybody that wants to. It's free of charge, of course, and we'll chat. You know, I can help clarify or anything like that. Other than that, the Discord server has been up for a little bit now, maybe a week and a half. So that's been a lot of fun. Some really interesting conversations going on in there, and people sharing resources with each other. So if you want to join the conversation, I would definitely recommend going in there. Other than that, that's about it for this episode, and I hope you guys can take that key and absolutely run with it. Let me know in the comments down below if you start trying this and discover one thing or another. I'd love to hear your experience after today. So, we'll see you next time.